Anytime you're shortcutting it, you're probably cheating some people. Players play. Tough players win.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Centered Podcast. For those of you joining us for the first time ever, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Anthony Ianni, and I am your host. I am a former Michigan State basketball player, as well as the first Division I college basketball player with autism. Again, thank you guys so much for joining us, and especially a special happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. So thank you to all you fathers listening in. Happy Father's Day to you guys. Hope you had an incredible day with your families, your wives, your sons, your daughters, your grandkids, whoever it is. Happy Father's Day to you all. If you'd like to hear more episodes of the Center Podcast, you guys can find us on iTunes and Spotify, as well as Odyssey.com. If you'd like to hear today's special guest, I'll tell you who it is in a minute. If you'd like to see the video interview, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is the Center Podcast. And speaking of Father's Day, I figured it'd be a special episode than having a special guest who is my father, Greg Ianni. So this idea was brought to me by a really good friend of mine, Mike Prisdale. Shout out to Prizzy. And he was like, man, like you should have your father on for Father's Day. I was like, that's an incredible idea. So that's what we're doing. So my father, Greg Ianni, is a Dexter, Michigan native, and he grew up not too far from Ann Arbor. So yes, I grew up with a family of Michigan fans. About 3/4 of my family are Michigan fans. So thanks to Dexter, Michigan. Shout out to Dexter. But my father, athletic administrator in NCAA athletics for almost 40 years, started his career off at the University of Virginia, then went to Ohio University for 14 years, where he was then at Michigan State University for 26. So a lot of those facilities that you guys see up on campus right now, he had a hand in a majority of those. So football stadium, the Tower, Mount Ice Arena expansion, the Hall of History at the Breslin Center, Berkowitz, our basketball facility, volleyball facility, you name a facility, he probably had a hand in it. So that's my father. But I think what makes my dad's, impressive resume even greater is just the incredible father he is. And so I brought him on for Father's Day. Hope you guys enjoy it. Here's my conversation with the legend, the GOAT, the greatest of all time, my father, Greg Ianni. So, well, first and foremost, because we are recording this for Father's Day, happy Father's Day, Dad.
Well, thanks, Anthony. Yeah, happy Father's Day to you and all the fathers out there that listen. And it's always been one of my favorite days because you know what fatherhood means to me and what you and your sister meant to me, or mean to me. So it's an important day, and the importance of fathers being good role models for their children and being there for their children when they need them is probably more important now than it's ever been, Anthony. So happy Father's Day to everybody.
No, and I definitely, and we'll talk about it later, but just everything that, you've taught both me and Allison from, whether it's life lessons, being athletes and students. I mean, it's definitely, lessons and wisdom that we're going to continue to pass down to Knox, Nash, Gia, Alessandra, and Angelina, because the wisdom and the advice that both you and Mom have given us, I mean, it's taken us so far in life. And, I know both she and I are very, very grateful for that.
Yeah, it's all good. We're pretty proud of you guys.
And we're proud of you guys as well. So, but I want to talk about, to start off, Dexter, Michigan. Dexter is literally 10 minutes away from Ann Arbor. And, for those of you listening that don't know, my dad grew up in a family of Michigan fans. So technically I live in a family with Michigan fans. My wife is a Michigan fan. So I like to say about 3/4 of my family are all Michigan fans. Was there ever a time or a point in your life where you were cheering for the Maize and Blue?
Oh, that's how it all started. It's interesting, Anthony. The first college football game I ever saw, interestingly enough, was at Michigan State. My dad, your grandfather, was the superintendent of schools at Byron, Michigan. And I had one of the big decisions in my life. I was signed up to compete in an old punt. It was called punt, pass, and kick.
Yep.
Ford Motor Company in the NFL started this, and it was my first eligible year. And I was signed up to compete we lived in Byron, and I was signed up to compete in Durand. And your grandfather got 2 tickets to the Michigan State Minnesota football game in 1962, I believe. So he said, "Look, it's up to you. You want to go to the football game? You want to go to the punt, pass, and kick competition?" I said, "That's a hard decision." I said, "I think I want to go to the football game." So we went to the football game in East Lansing. And Minnesota at the time had a great team. They had a guy by the name of Bobby Bell, who was a linebacker, who's in the Hall of Fame. He played for the Chiefs for years. And I remember where I sat in Spartan Stadium, and that was my first college football game. But my next college football game was we got tickets to a game in Ann Arbor. You know what? I think I've got this backwards. My first college football game was in Ann Arbor. 1961. I believe it was 61. Anyways, Michigan was playing Ohio State. And it was my first game in Michigan Stadium. And surprisingly enough, Anthony, the attendance that day was like 62,000 in Michigan Stadium. They didn't fill that place for a long time. The only game that Michigan filled Michigan Stadium for in the late 50s, early 60s was the Michigan State game. Ohio State game was about 65,000 people. If you can believe that. Really? That didn't catch fire again until Bo started coaching against Woody. And so we went to that game, and Michigan got hammered. I mean, hammered, because Ohio State was number 1 in the country. And Michigan had closed the game to it was 42 to I think 42-17, and Michigan had scored a late touchdown inside a minute to go and made it 42, I think 42-24. And so Ohio State, Michigan kicks off, and this kid for Ohio State takes it back 90 some yards for a touchdown. My dad looked at it. He said, "Kid hadn't played the whole game." He looked up, so this guy's a sophomore, because freshmen couldn't play at the time. So what's his name? He says his name's Warfield, Paul Warfield. Okay, remember Paul Warfield, played for the Dolphins, Hall of Famer, great All-American Ohio State. So he takes it back 90 yards, makes it 48-24, and Woody goes for 2, and he makes it inside a minute. So I think the final was 50-24 or something like that. So anyways, that was my first foray into Michigan football. And then, because of where we lived, and your grandfather, was a huge Michigan fan, because when we moved to Dexter, I just became a Michigan fan. I mean, we went to all Dad had season tickets, went to a lot of games with him. And then at the time, Don Canham had become the athletic director, and you could get on certain games, high school kids could get into the game for $2. So we'd go down all the time. Your Uncle Chris Wall, who I graduated with, who's married to your Aunt Kathy, and we used to go down there all the time, and my high school buddies, and we just go to the games. And then I got hooked on Michigan basketball. I saw Cassie Russell play his last game in Yost Fieldhouse. It was Yost Fieldhouse at the time. He scored 48 points. I saw Rudy Tomjanovich score 48 points in Chrysler Arena. I saw the first game in Chrysler Arena. Saw a lot of games there. Saw a lot of great players. So yeah, I was a pretty staunch Michigan fan until I graduated from high school, until I came to Michigan State.
It amazes me how you mentioned how high school players can get tickets for $2, whereas today, like, tickets are like anywhere from $75 to $100. Unless it's like Michigan, Ohio State, then people are going to offer like $500 a ticket. It just amazes me how much of a difference, 40, 50 some years ago to now, as far as like ticket prices go?
Well, we can get into a discussion on this at some point in time, but college athletics is a different deal now, Anthony. It's,
Yeah.
The schools have to charge that kind of money. I mean, they got a lot of bills to pay. They're paying coaches huge amounts of money. And at the time, schools were trying to get people to come to the games and get interested. And you know what? It hooked a lot of the guys I went to high school with. They're still Michigan fans because of those games that they just, $2 and they showed their high school ID and they got to get in. So, Mr. Hollis and Paul Shager, Paul, who were in charge of our marketing at the time, they call that churn, getting new people into the stadiums. And that's what Don Canham did. He got a lot of people exposed in Ann Arbor. He did these mass mailings. He appealed to the housewives and of the families to sell them on a day in Ann Arbor for a game. And he went grassroots and he grew that Michigan brand with the people in southeastern Michigan. Plus, they had a football coach who had got everybody excited about their team. So you dovetail those two things together, and they really grew their fan base. And one of the issues now, Anthony, as I concern myself with college athletics, is how do you grow that? How do you get people? How do you get the family of four, the guys, young married family, couple kids, like your son's age, like your niece's Gia, how do you get them sold on college athletics so that there'll be fans going out? Well, you get them to the stadium, because if you can get them into the stadium, I don't care if it's Ann Arbor, I don't care if it's East Lansing, Columbus, South Bend, I don't care where you're at. It's college football is a great show. Mm-hmm. And so, you get hooked on it. It's pretty easy to get hooked on it, and the tailgating and the bands and all the things around it. You've got to expose them to it, though, and not just on television, because if you expose to them on television, they're just going to get hooked on the game. And you want them to get hooked on the event and ultimately hooked on your university. So maybe they'll go to school there someday. So that's a lot harder to do nowadays with the cost of tickets and the demand for tickets.
You talked about earlier, you and your high school buddies. Whenever I visited Dexter as a really young kid, it was a really small town. It still kind of is a little bit, and it's kind of actually growing a little more. What were some of the cool things that, whether it was you, my uncles or Uncle Chris or Aunt Kathy and Aunt Candace, what were kind of the things that you guys would do as far as hangouts in Dexter, other than the downtown A&W?
The A&W? I'll tell you what, we just played. We played whatever sport was in season. Okay, if it was fall, we were playing football. If it was summer, we were playing baseball. If it was spring and summer, we'd throw basketball in there. I can remember, Anthony, we used to shoot hoops. We'd shovel off the driveway, and the ball would get cold and it wouldn't dribble up. So I'd run it in the house. I'd run the ball under hot water, bring it out. It would dribble for like 10 minutes. We'd play. But that's what we did, and I can remember, honest to goodness, on Saturdays, I had a friend in town who had a nice yard where we always played football, nice flat yard. And somebody would bring out a radio and we'd listen to the Michigan game. We'd have the Michigan game on while we're playing football in the backyard. I mean, we just played, and that's what we did. And I had a great period of time in Dexter. The people were wonderful. I got a good education there. Sports was a lot of fun. It was just, it was a nice small town, small class B school. Now it's an A school. That area is really growing over there. As you well know, you played against them when you were in a regional final. And, the area is really booming, but I enjoyed my time there, and I had great friends, and we were just, whatever sport was in season, that's what we were playing.
So you mentioned high school. You were a 3-sport athlete: football, basketball, and baseball. Out of those three, what was probably your favorite that you did when you were in high school?
Well, when I was playing, uh, I loved basketball. I just I loved the game. I just loved to play all the time. What I was best at was baseball, and it would probably um, it just drove your grandfather crazy because I'd spend all this time shooting hoops and practicing basketball, and he said if you would spend half that time on baseball, you'd be a great baseball player. But I don't know. The older I get, I wish I had spent more time with it. I love playing. The older I get, the more I realized I enjoyed football. I did things in football that crossed over with basketball. I had a really good arm, so I played quarterback, and we threw the ball. At that time, we threw the ball more than a lot of people. So I loved in football. I loved the camaraderie and the team aspect of football. I don't think there's anything like it. Baseball, and it was more individual, because when you pitch, you got the ball in your hand, and you got to do what you got to do. So, but yeah, as I look back, I probably should have spent. My dad was right. I probably should have spent more time with baseball. Loved basketball. Had a good career. Didn't jump well enough. Didn't run well enough, to be a great player. Yeah, I was a very good player, but to be a great player, I didn't have those physical attributes. But boy, I sure loved to play.
You brought up how, Grandpa Nick, would say to you, if you would have spent more time on baseball, you could have been a great baseball player. Just kind of talk about, how much both him and Grandma, really pushed you as far as when it came to athletics and being a student in Dexter.
Well, you know what, Anthony? They were great role models for me in that for my later years as a parent, is they never pushed me to do anything. Mm-hmm. Their only caveat is if you're going to do it, you do it as well as you can, work as hard as you can at it. Don't go half-ass on it. Put everything into it. So, but they didn't say, if heck, I was in the band when I was in, middle school. That was
I did not know that.
Oh yeah, that was a failed experiment. But you know what? If you're going to be in band, you be the best musician you can be. And that's all they ask. Same thing in school. Be the best you can be. And so that I don't advocate that anyone forces a young person into something that they may not particularly want to do. If you're a parent and your son or daughter is interested in sports, then be supportive. It's like with you and Allison, we never ever pushed you guys. The only time I pushed was when you had made a determination to play a certain sport, and I felt like you were slacking off a little bit. Then I would push, okay? And that wasn't very often, because you and your sister practiced hard, played hard, were good teammates. But that's all my mom and dad did, Aunt. They just said, look, if you're going to do something, you do it as well as you can possibly do it. You may not be the best, but do it as well as you can possibly do. Give it your all, and make sure that when you're done playing, practicing, whatever, or done with a game, that you've given all you can give out on the floor or the court.
Unless it came to free throws and you weren't 100% from the game, you were going to.
Coach Grandma would jump in there, and it's interesting. My dad was an coach. He coached baseball and football. So after games, and he knew a little something about basketball too. So after games, he would critique and we'd talk about the game. My grandma wouldn't say anything. So after my sophomore year, she got, and she's a basketball nut. She loves, even at 91 years old, man, she watches every basketball game she can possibly watch on television. And then she jumped in and started critiquing free throw shooting. And so with me and your three uncles and and Aunt Candace, the youngest who did play. She was a good athlete. You didn't make your free throws, man, you can get fed. So we always practiced our free throws.
Because I remember there were a couple times where Grandma came to my games in high school, and if I and I think it was she may have came to our game against Grand Ledge my senior year where I was like 9 for 10 from the line. 90% is pretty good. You know, if you go 9 from 10 from the line, that's pretty darn good.
It's really good. Yeah.
Especially for a post player. But I remember, you know, Grandma would always want to call and know how the game went, how I did. And she would always ask me, well, how'd you do on your free throws? Oh, Grandma, I went 9 for 10 tonight. Well, why didn't you go 10 for 10? I was like, well, you know, it was halfway down in and out of the rim. I don't care. You're supposed to go 10 for 10. Like, all right, I got you, Grandma. Next game, I'll go 100%. I got you.
Yeah.
So, but that's the one thing I've always loved about Grandma Jer is that she always, you know, I don't know if it was like this when you guys were younger, when it came to sports or just life in general, she always held you to the highest accountability. And I would imagine Grandpa Nick was probably the same way.
Yeah, and I think, Anthony, that's not only in sports. I mean, they held us accountable for everything, for our behaviors, for how we treated people, how we looked upon others, how we carried ourselves. I mean, they were, you know, they were honest all the time about that, and it was accountability was really important in our household. And quite honestly, you know, I'm glad it was that way, because I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. You know, it was I had a great childhood, no question.
So you're at Michigan State now. What were kind of some of the life lessons that you learned being in East Lansing, and was kind of being at Michigan State like the final nail in the coffin that kind of made you be a Spartan for life?
Well, yeah, I think so, because you know, when I got into college athletics, Anthony, I started at the University of Virginia, and then I was at Ohio U, and then I came here. And when you're in college athletics, where you graduated from, you put on the back burner because you don't know where you're going to be working.
Right.
You know, so when I was at Virginia, I was a Cavalier. When I was at Ohio U, I was a Bobcat. Okay, I came to Michigan State and I was a Spartan. And it just so happened that my affinity for the institution as a former student, as a graduate, as alumnus, just piled onto that, you know, representing the school. But it's kind of funny, you can't. I never felt that you could be you could be a gung-ho fan. You had to take the fan out of it. When you're in the business, you take the fan out of it. You have to be, because there are many circumstances where you have to look at it, take yourself out of any kind of fandom and interest in the institution and in the team to make decisions relative to what's best for the entire university. And so while I'm a Spartan, I'm probably more of a Spartan, you know, since I've left than when I was there, if that makes sense, because you have to show some objectivity.
Right.
You just can't be this rabid, you know, even though I wanted us to be successful more than anything in the world, you know, you have to tone that down a little bit.
So you talk about, you mentioned you got your career started at the University of Virginia, but at the time, you know, athletics wasn't even on your radar at that time when you were in college. No,
it wasn't no, I was going to go into the broadcast business. I wanted to be on the business side of the broadcast business, not the talent side. And so after I graduated, I moved to Saginaw and took a couple jobs up there with some radio stations, and quickly found out that that's not really what I wanted to do. And so, you know, I had to do some soul searching, and I had to figure out what I did want to do. And as I evaluated things and went and talked to people, I found out that, what I truly enjoyed in life was athletics. Okay. So I got to that point. So what athletics? Do I want to be a coach? Did I want to coach? Do I want to go back to college and, get involved in coaching? And then your grandfather read about a program at Ohio University, sports administration program. At the time, there were only 3 of them in the country. There was Ohio U, which was the first, UMass, and St. Thomas University in Florida. And so I went and talked to some people at the Lions, and one guy down there by the name of Lyle Smith, who was a great reporter for the Detroit News, and then became the Lions PR guy. I went and talked to him, and he said, "Look," he said, "if you're interested in this, you want to get in this program at Ohio U." So I applied. I got in the program. Borrowed some money to go to school, and off I went to Athens. And the first week I was there, I knew I'd make the right decision. I mean, I was with a group of people, Anthony, that the other students, there were like maybe 30 of us total in the entire program, that we all loved sports, different aspects of sports, but we all loved sport. And we would talk about it for hours, and we would immerse ourselves in it. It was just, it was a great time for me because I knew I found it. And so I left there and got an internship at the University of Virginia and spent a year there. Then a full-time job opened up in the athletic department of Ohio U. I went back there for 14 years, started as the ticket manager, assistant business manager. I mean, I wore every hat in that department, which was great because I had a lot of experience. Worked for a great man, Harold McElhaney, dear friend and probably my biggest mentor in the business. And then, then I met your mother there, and you and your sister were born in Athens, and it was great community, great people. Then had the opportunity to come here after 14 years at Ohio U, and made the transition, and the rest is history.
What were some of the things that Mack taught you during your time at Ohio U that you took when you got the job at Michigan State?
The biggest thing he taught me, Anthony, was patience. Patience in making a decision. Because here I was, this young, wet behind the ears. I was ready to roll. I mean, when you're young, let's go. Yep. And we'd have decisions to make as a department. And I thought he was dragging his feet. And I couldn't understand. I said, "Mack, we got to go." I'm working on it. I'm working on it. And there's in some instances, Anthony, you have to make quick decisions, but there are other instances when you can let things simmer a little bit and maybe things become a little clearer, and that's what he taught me. The difference between those kinds of decisions, and that there are decisions where you have to sometimes just let things play out a little bit before you pull the trigger on your decision. The other thing he taught me, Anthony, is that family was really important to him relative to work. So we had the Ohio University athletic family, and he and his wife Gloria, they always did things for the family. They'd have get-togethers, and it was just that we were one group pushing in the same direction. I really appreciated that. That was really important to me to learn that.
So, and this is another question I'll ask you about your days at Michigan State, but during your time at Ohio University, was there like a specific coach that you really enjoyed working with in the time that you were in Athens?
We had a football coach by the name of Tom Litzenberg. Mm-hmm. And he had moderate success. Part of the reason he struggled was our facilities were so bad, and we were working on trying to fix that. But he had to be one of the finest human beings, Anthony, I ever worked with. I mean, he had a wonderful family. They were all successful. His wife was terrific. And he was just a fair, honest person. And, you know, I found as I went through my career that there aren't a lot of people like that in college athletics on the coaching side. There aren't. Yeah, a lot of coaches that I worked with ran into, their first concern was themselves. Coach Litzenberg's first concern was never with himself. It was always with others. And I admired that. And he's since passed, but he was one of the finest human beings I ever had the pleasure of working with.
So one of the little known facts that, you know, the listeners may not know about me, as you already mentioned, me and Allison, my sister, were both born in Athens, Ohio. And so we're kind of Ohio kids in a way. So after Allison was born and you and mom have found out that you were going to have a son, you know, as a father, you know, how exciting is that to know that you're going to have, you know, a son and that your last name kind of carries on, you know, for basically for a long time?
Well, actually, Anthony, we didn't know you were a boy until the moment you left the womb.
Really?
Because they didn't test
the
sex of the baby at the time. So the Dr. Kroner, John Kroner, who was your mom's doctor, he delivered all the babies in the athletic department at Ohio U.
Really?
He had never delivered a boy. They were always girls. So when your sister was born, I remember I was absolutely certain your sister was a boy.
Mm-hmm.
I was positive. And this is one thing in life I'm not proud of. When she was delivered, John, he delivered her and then he took her and pulled her up close to him so you couldn't tell, you know, what sex the baby was.
Right.
And we're going, what is he? And he says, it's a girl. And I was disappointed. I was disappointed because I thought I was going to have a boy. And, but then they cleaned her up and they gave her to me to take down to the nursery.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad I had a little girl. She turned out to be awesome. And then you came along and, you know, here's our little boy. And, you know, it's pretty exciting. You know, I had a girl, I had a boy, but quite honestly, Anthony, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You know, Allison's got, I'm sure your brother-in-law, you know, would like to have a son. But I asked him, we were goofing around. Girls were over here. I don't know if your listeners know, but, you know, Rocco Cerrone played football. He was our starting left tackle for 2 years. And he was a good one. And married Allison, and they've got 3 little girls. So I asked Rock, I said, hey, would you give back any of those girls and trade one in for a boy? He goes, not on your life. So, you know, what you really concern yourself with, Anthony, as you well know, and every father out there and mother listening know, that when their child is born, you just want to you pray that they are healthy, that there are no issues with them coming into this world. That's all you worry about. You just want a healthy baby. Boy or girl makes no difference. But, you know, I was blessed, you know, because I've got a great daughter and a great son. So that's as good as it gets.
So you talk about the quote unquote issues. When I was first diagnosed, being on the spectrum, what was kind of going through both yours and mom's minds? Because that was a time period, Dad, where nobody knew what the heck autism was. It was very if any, it was probably very littly, it wasn't as well known as it is today. And that was also a time period where there was absolutely no resources and really no guidance for autism at all. So when mom got the official diagnosis for me, what was kind of going through your guys' mind at that time?
Well, it goes back when we were in Athens. You know, the behaviors that you displayed, our pediatrician thought you were ADD,
Right.
and he wanted to put you on Ritalin.
Mm-hmm.
And both your mother and I said, no, we're not gonna medicate a 2.5-year-old child. We're not doing that. So, the behavior issues were there, and your mom was the one that dealt with them most of the time because she was with you most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so the interesting thing was I had left to come to Michigan State. I left in January, and you guys were still in Athens. You didn't join me until summer, late spring, summer.
Yeah.
And so your mother had gotten an appointment to take you to Children's Hospital in Columbus, which is a great, great hospital, and to see a specialist up there. So they did the tests on you, and they came up with a diagnosis. Pervasive developmental disorder, which is on the autism spectrum. And so that was good. Your mom, we finally knew what we were dealing with. And so I remember and I got this secondhand because your mom called me. I was up here working, and she's in Columbus with you. And I said, well, that's good. So what do we do now? And she goes, I don't know. Because she asked the doctor, she says, well, okay, so we've got a diagnosis. What do we do? And the doctor said, well, there's some people doing some research. And he said, that's the best I can tell you is you have to just kind of keep looking at the research, see what's out there. It's a developing area of medicine. And so, as we've said before, we were flying blind. So when I found out, I was happy that we knew, but I was, again, in just kind of okay, now what do we do kind of thing. And we were winging it. And fortunately, I look for where we came from when you were diagnosed, and I look at your nieces now who are on the spectrum, and they've been going through therapy on a daily basis now for almost a year. Okay. So that's the difference, Anthony. That's great for parents. So they know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. We are learning how to adapt and help these young people and how to push them through, past this thing so they can do what they want to do in their lives. So it's different time now. There were challenges, but you know what? We made it through. You made it through. Turned out just fine, and you're doing great things. So, but it's a lot. It's a better situation today, I think, than it was when you were a child.
I mean, there's no question about that. Fast forward to a year after the diagnosis. So you and mom sat down with some doctors and specialists and some, evaluators, if you will, for my IEP. For those of you that don't know what IEP stands for, it stands for Individualized Education Plan. You sit down in this meeting after they evaluated me, and I can't remember if it was in the kindergarten classroom at Warcliffe Elementary or if it was in the conference room there, but they tell you and mom that, we see a child with autism and he's probably not going to be successful in life. He'll probably barely graduate from high school. We don't see college in his future. We understand that you and your wife are both athletes. That's probably not going to happen. And there are group institutions, for individuals like him, later on in life. Those words are said. What goes through your mind as a parent with a young child with autism at such a young age?
Well, it was one of those days that, it was like, it's like you don't forget. It's like it happened yesterday, but and these people were just doing their jobs, Anthony. They were evaluating, and they had put you through all their tests and all this kind of stuff. And but they made some assumptions and some determinations that your mother and I didn't think were quite right. So we, interrupted them after I think 3 or 4 of them had talked, and they were all saying pretty much the same thing. And I said, I appreciate your expertise and appreciate what you're doing for Anthony. I said, let me tell you what his mother and I, what our expectations are of him. I said, our expectations are he will go to high school, he'll graduate from high school, and he will go to college, and he will graduate from college. So I don't know how we're going to do that. I said, but we've got to put our collective minds together and figure out a way to get it done. And they looked at me like I was, had 4 heads, they're saying, well, this guy's in denial. Well, fortunately, Sandy McDonald, late great Sandy McDonald, who was assistant director of special education at the Oklahoma School, she sat in on that meeting. And when it was over, she came up to Jamie and I, she goes, listen, she goes, I don't know how we're going to do this, but we're going to figure out a way. And that's what we had. And so it was the schools, it was the teachers, all putting their collective heads together and your mother just drove the train. She was on it all the time. And so collectively they came up with strategies, and how best to get you to focus and to do the things that they wanted you to do in school. And it's interesting. I would assume that a lot of those things they did for you are standard operating procedure now, for a lot of kids. And, but they were flying blind. But I think they got into it. I think they got into the fact that they were breaking new ground, right. And as an educator, those challenges, good teachers take that on, and they took it on. And there were times when your mother and I had to challenge the school district a little bit, and there were, and not too often, but every once in a while. And a lot of people call your mom to this day about they have an autistic child, and do you have any advice and that kind of thing? And one thing she tells every one of them is you need to advocate for your child. Okay, there are state laws, there are state policies that protect and create opportunities for kids with autism. And you can't take no for an answer. You have got to keep pushing and advocating for your child. And then the other thing we did, and your mother, you're on your mom, that we taught you to advocate for yourself. Okay. And if you don't advocate for yourself, and I think this is anybody, Anthony, that whether you're autistic or a valedictorian of the class or whatever you are, okay, if you don't advocate for yourself, you're going to get pushed around. Okay, so you've got to advocate for yourself. Meaning, if someone says something, you get into the bullying thing, which I know you're deep into. If we would tell kids to advocate for themselves and go up to someone and say, you know what, I don't like that. I don't like what you're saying to me. Or go to somebody, a teacher or someone, say, you know what, I don't like what is being said about me. You don't have to call anybody out. But you got to advocate for yourself, Anthony. You have to advocate, because ultimately, if you don't advocate for yourself, no one will advocate for you. And that was something that your mother has told other parents, and that's how she teaches. That's how she taught. That's how she coaches. You got to advocate for yourself. What she always tell you and Allison: use your words. Use your words. Tell me what the problem is. tell me, communicate, and that's something that I am concerned with in today's society, that we do such a poor job of communicating with each other, because we want to text, we want to, and I know that's a fast way, we want to tweet, however you all communicate. I still pick up the phone and talk to people, which I guess is archaic, but we have to make sure we're communicating with people, because if you look at right now, if there was one thing we found out during this pandemic, is our ability to communicate is not very good. We're not good at it anymore.
Right.
Because it's become so easy that, and we're so busy. And you know what? A lot of it is the way life is now. I mean, life's busy.
Yeah. You're
way busier. You and Kelly are way busier than your mother and I were. You have way more things going on. Okay. It's just the way life is today. Okay. It's the way life is today. And some of that you have no control over. So the ability to do things quickly is important. And, I get that, but we still have to communicate with each other. We have to tell people what we think. We have to be able, another part of communication, Anthony, that is not held in high regard right now, is listening. Listening is a form of communication, because if you're going to communicate to me, I've got to listen.
Yeah.
And we're not doing a very good job of that right now. We're all shouting at each other. Nobody's listening. We're all shouting at each other. So communication is so important. And that's, to advocate for oneself. I think it's the one thing that really helped you back when you were, you're growing up and you were going through the whole learning piece was, to advocate, ask questions, don't assume. If you're not sure, ask questions, communicate. And I think that's critical.
Well, it's like Dr. Arnold, who says hello to you and Mom, by the way. We had him on the show a couple of days ago. And it's like he taught me from day one of college. And that was to utilize your resources, because if you utilize every single resource that's offered you or given to you in college, chances are you're going to graduate in 4 to 5 years, because you're going to utilize every single resource that's offered or given you. And he always encouraged us, like, if you are confused about anything, ask questions. Ask questions. You got to do that. And you and Mom taught me that too. And I think that was the one thing that helped me be successful, not just as a student, but as an athlete, because if there were times where I was confused in practice, whether it was at Okemos or Grand Valley or Michigan State, I wasn't afraid to walk off to the side and ask Coach Stoltz or Coach Izzo or Fife, Coach Wesley, Coach Paddock, whoever, and just ask them for directions, or ask them, okay, how do you want me to do this drill? Like, what spot do you want me to watch? Because right. if I wasn't asking questions, or even my professors, like if I was confused on things, or my teachers at Okemos, like if I didn't ask those questions, it was going to be harder for me to try and do it by myself. Because if I was going to do it by myself, which were there times I kind of let my ego get in the way of, oh, I don't need help, I can do this, I can do that. Like, right. There were times I did that, and it bit me in the ass, which, I learned from it. But asking those questions, it helped me, because I also knew that, hey, these are people who care about you and want you to succeed, and they're not just going to leave you hanging out to dry. They want you to succeed. Whereas if you don't ask questions, you try to do it on your own, unless you're like a 4.0 straight A smartest person in the room type of person, if you try to do things on your own, chances are you may not succeed at what you want to succeed at.
Right. Well, that's a great point, Anthony, because if you have a question, you don't, or you question something and you don't ask for help, in essence, you're guessing. You're guessing. And, at best, you got a 50-50 shot, right? At best. So, and I know the great coaches, I've had the opportunity to work with some amazing coaches. And they always communicated with their athletes. And if they had a question if a kid wasn't sure about an assignment or about a drill or about a technique, they wanted them to ask about that. What, and they were great at it. And that's what teaching and coaching is teaching. That to me, Anthony, is what it's all about. And the best coaches and the best teachers are the ones who create an environment where it's okay to ask questions. You have to create that environment. You've been in environments where it's not okay to ask questions. I want anybody asking me a question. I'm going to tell you how to do it. Now, don't ask me a question. Don't. They aren't open. They aren't inviting. And I don't know. I just think the best coaches are the ones who create this openness, so that that's about preparation, Anthony, in coaching and in life. Get your questions answered. Get your question. You got a question, you ask the coach, and not be afraid of the coach, and that coach creates an air about them that is open. Without a doubt, the best coach I ever worked with was Nick Saban. I mean, it's not even, I'm a huge fan, not just because of how successful he's been, but how he does his, how he does things, his approach. Right. And I would go to practices, and early in practice, they have very similar to basketball. Early in practice, you get with a coach and you work on skills, right? You have skill work. So in football, it's so big, they take each position unit and they go work on skills. So Coach Saban always works with the defensive backs. And when he was here, Mark D'Antonio was his defensive backs coach.
Right.
So I would watch, there were two things I watched here, and I learned a lot about people. I watched Coach Saban work with the players. Then I watched Coach D'Antonio. And instead of pouting or feeling like he was being one up by the head coach, he just stood off to the side. He'd pull a kid aside. He'd coach him up, but he was taking everything in. He learned everything. He was like a sponge, okay? And I think that put him in pretty good shape as he went on in his career. But Coach Saban, if you want to see his passion, it's when he's coaching those corners and those safeties.
Because he was originally,
techniques, how patting him on the back, high fives. I mean, the kinds of things you wouldn't think you would see from him. He just really loved that, and the back and forth between the athletes and him about techniques, and I mean, it was just fascinating to watch. And a lot of people wouldn't think he would create, just his image that's out there that some people have of him, that he wouldn't create that kind of environment, but he did.
And it's the same way with Coach Is too. Like, Tom in a sense is kind of almost the same way, because, you see him on the sidelines in games, like he gets on. I mean, you've been around him and I've been around him long enough to know, like, he'll get on guys if they're not giving him his best. Like, if you screw up, you're going to hear it from him. But at the end of the day, he's going to teach you what you did wrong. He's going to teach you the skills and the technique part, and he's going to pat you on the back and high five you. And I think that's why, him and Coach Saban are kind of cut from the same cloth, if you will, because they kind of do the exact same things when it comes to their coaching styles.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, Coach Izzo would be number 2, of the greatest coaches I ever worked with. The thing I appreciate about Coach Izzo, and I think it'll tell you all you want to know, is when he's coaching in a game, is when guys come off the floor and he puts his arm around them and he's coaching them. Mm-hmm. Okay, right? He's coaching them. I don't care who it is, he's coaching them. Or he's sitting, I ran into saw a picture of you and him on the bench the other day, and I don't know, he was talking to you could see, but he was pointing to something out on the floor. So he was coaching you. He was coaching you up. And that's what he does. He's a coach, right? He's a coach. I don't care how much these guys get paid. The great ones are still coaches, okay? At their core, they love working with young people. They do, okay? You could take all the other stuff away. That's what they love. And that those two guys, and I've worked with some other good ones too, but those two guys, you know, the reason they're successful is pretty obvious. It's work ethic and how they relate to young people when they're coaching.
So you talked about already, you know, some of the great coaches you work with. Kind of talk about, you know, the great team you had during, you know, the 26 years you were at Michigan State, and how just working with Mr. Hollis, Paul Shager, you know, Foudy, Rick Atkinson, Seth, Casey, just how like that group right there kind of made the game day atmosphere, if you will, better for the fan base.
Well, we did have a heck of an administrative team, Anthony. We had, you know, Mr. Hollis was terrific athletic director. You know, he and I saw things very similarly. So I can't remember more than a handful of times when we ever disagreed on anything, you know. And so, you know, he let people do their jobs, which is my philosophy. I think that's important. I don't care what aspect of life you're in. You hire good people, you give them direction, and then you let them go do what you hired them to do. And if you look over their shoulder all the time, they aren't going to be as good, and they aren't going to be as successful. So we had a group of people that you didn't need to look over their shoulder. I mean, we had some, we were raising money. Chuck Sleeper was raising money. Peggy Brown was the business person. And I mean, great person to work with. Mentioned Paul Shager, who took over Mr. Hollis's job, which was a difficult thing to do, because Mr. Hollis is probably one of the all-time best marketers in the history of college athletics. But Paul took over, did a great job. Jim Pignataro, who you know very well. Jim ran the student. He started as the director of the Smith Center and Student Athlete Academic Services, but then he branched out into all the things that touch the student athlete, the sports medicine, the nutrition, all those kinds of things, strength and conditioning. He oversaw all that. Tremendous professional, super individual. And so we all did our jobs, Anthony, in concert with each other. So everything we did was for one positive goal, and that was to be successful on the field and provide a great experience for our student athletes, one, and for our fans, two. And personally, I had a terrific team. You know, I was fortunate, you know, I was there a long time, so I got to hire most of those people. You know, they did a great job. I mean, Amy Foudy's is you know, she ran the turf section and stadium field and all the other fields, but then she grew into doing other things. She became a, you know, really well-rounded administrator. Rick Atkinson, who I have more respect, maybe Anthony, for than any other individual I've worked with, for this sole reason that Rick was our gymnastics coach, men's gymnastics, and a very, very good one. Okay, he had like 3 scholarships or something, and every year he was like second or third in the Big Ten. It was unbelievable. I mean, he was a great coach, just a great coach. And we dropped his program. Okay, so I mean, he loved gymnastics. He loved his guys. That's pretty harsh when that happens. Can leave a lot of bitterness. And so Dr. Underwood was the athletic director at the time, and he offered Rick an administrative position to work with me. And to Rick's credit, you know, he said, okay, I'm not happy about the gymnastics thing, but I'm going to take this job. And he turned into a heck of an administrator. Ended up running all of the, you know, doing a lot of the facility work and a lot of the event management stuff. So That's just two people. Seth Kessler, who's still there. Seth did a really, really good job. So, I had a good step. We just had good people, Anthony, and we were on the same page. We were on the same page, and the decisions coming from above were decisions that you could live with. You didn't like them all the time, but you could live with them. You understood why they were being made, and we were just on the same page. And it was a great time at Michigan State. We had about a 10-year period there that we were successful on the field, on the court, but we were doing some really good things off the field too. We were building really good facilities. We were raising a lot of money. Our kids were graduating with academic honors. It was all the metrics. We were balancing the budget. By all metrics, we were doing extremely well.
You brought up facilities, and just like compared to where the university was in '93, where you got there, and where it is today, I mean, it's nothing short of incredible. What was one of your favorite? So I'm gonna a two-parter here. What was your favorite facility that you got to oversee and see go be put into Michigan State athletics? And what's one facility you wish you could have gotten to work on more before you retired?
Well, that's a hard to answer, because it's like asking a parent which child do you like the best. I think the stadium, the tower, building the tower, and because that was such a monumental project for Michigan State at the time. It was the largest, I think, the largest facility project undertaken up to that time. Now that's obviously since been passed, but I was in the middle of that on the financial side, on the construction side. I mean, that was a 5-6 year project.
Yeah.
And so to get that one built, that one changed the landscape of campus, if you will. I mean, that building it can be seen from a lot of directions. We had, to answer the second part of your question, Anthony, we had the one thing I wish we'd have gotten done, and we were so close. We had checked off just about all the facility projects that we had put in our facility master plan. And we were down to the Jennison Fieldhouse issue. Okay. So, Jennison serves all of our track programs, men's and women's, gymnastics, wrestling, and volleyball. So because they're all there, they kind of bump into each other. So the idea was we were going to build a small arena, all multi-purpose arena, seats about 4,000 people, where we're going to make that the home of Spartan volleyball. And then gymnastics and wrestling would compete there. And then we would renovate the indoor space in Jennison, so it would be for the track programs. And then we would create space where you could drop netting and you could do some intramural stuff in there in the evenings. So we were well on our way to the design. We had an architect involved, and we had meetings, and we had an early schematic of the arena, and we had the money for it, and it was going to be a game changer, especially for volleyball. And then the whole Nassar thing came along, and that building probably will never get built, at least not for quite some time, and which is a shame, because that was a game changer for a lot of sports, and really was the last piece of this master plan that we had put together. That was disappointing. That was going to be a heck of a facility, and it was going to be the kind of facility, Anthony, that the entire university could use. Yeah. Commencements for small concerts, for all sorts of things we were going to be able to use it for. And so that's where we had migrated to the point where the buildings we were looking to build were going to be facilities that would help the entire campus community, not just the athletics program. And that disappoints me that we never got to that point, because we were so close.
Yeah. And there's no question in my mind, based on your guys' track record as a team and based on facilities and everything, that was from, you mentioned, from the stadium tower to Scandalaris to the Hall of History to our basketball facility. I mean, 1855, there would have been no question in my mind that Jennison Fieldhouse would have been, incredible.
Yeah, it really would have. Yeah, we had a great design for it, Anthony, and it was going to become a multi-use facility, so that, would have been able to be used by our track teams, but then in the evening, joggers and intramurals, and it just would have been a great setup in there. But again, things happen.
Yep, they do. They do. I mean, it's like you and Mom have always taught me, things happen for a reason. Things just happen for a reason. I got a couple more questions for you. So throughout your athletic administrator career, obviously the main goal is to be an athletic director. That's always, I would think, probably any athletic administrator's goal is to kind of be the guy that runs that show. You had that opportunity to be in the final running, if you will, for the University of Toledo job. And I tell this story to people all the time, and I don't think a lot of my listeners may know about it, but you actually pulled your name out of the running. Can you tell us why?
Well, there were a number of things. The job itself wasn't what the University of Toledo that I had remembered when I was at Ohio U. Mm-hmm. A little different than it was. They had some issues, but nothing that I couldn't have dealt with, that weren't overcomable. But I think more importantly, that it was where we were at as a family. Allison was going to be a junior. I know your mother would not have wanted her to leave here and go to high school for her senior year someplace. So I knew that would be, something that would happen. I'm not sure I would have, I knew that's something I didn't want to do. And you were doing so well here that, quite frankly, I didn't want to, this just wasn't my decision. It was your mom's too. We talked through this together. That, I didn't feel it was fair to take that kind of chance with your life. I'm not throwing a guilt trip on you here. I don't want you to think it's because no, I just thought that because, Anthony, so little was known about autism, and we had so many people had worked so hard to get you to the point you were at. I just didn't feel comfortable. Your mother and I didn't feel comfortable that taking you away from Okemos and the school system here and the structure that had been put together for you would be in your best interest. And I worried particularly that it would have, I don't think it, it wouldn't have stopped you from becoming who you are. It might have slowed you down a little bit. And I just didn't think that was right. So, so I said, we weighed it all. And I decided, and I don't know if I'd gotten a job or not. I know actually the guy who is Mike O'Brien is the athletic director down there, who I've known Mike for a long time. Good man. I don't know. I don't know about beating Mike out for the job or not. Who knows? But I just didn't want to leave Toledo hanging out there if I wasn't committed to going through with it if they offered me the job. And then I just thought it was in the best interest of the Ianni family that that's how we should proceed. Now, here's an interesting thing. In retrospect, this is one of those, everything in the rear view mirror, you can see 100% clearly, right?
Right.
Knowing what I know now about you, you wouldn't have had a problem. You'd have been fine. You'd have been fine. Okay. But I have 20 years of track record to understand that, which I didn't have at the time. And so your mother and I talk about this all the time. That probably could have done it, but okay. If you extrapolate that out, he said, yeah, I should have done it. Well, what would have happened if I'd have done it? Well, maybe Allison wouldn't have met Rocco. Maybe and if that doesn't happen, there's no Gia, Alessandra, and Angelina. And maybe Anthony doesn't meet Kelly, and there's no Knox and there's no Nash. I mean, there's all these things that you can say, yeah, I should have done this, should have done that. But there are things that happen afterwards based on the decision you made at the time. You know what? Professionally, I probably should have went after it. But personally, it was 150% the right move. So I don't look back. You make a decision to move on, and it was the right one.
Like you and Mom taught me, no regrets. And obviously, this day, like you have no regrets, pulling out of the running for that, because you knew where we were in East Lansing and Okemos at that time. We were going to be successful, and you definitely made the right call.
Yeah, no question.
So my last question for you, Dad, and then we're going to get into the fun part. I got some 10 rapid fire questions for you. They are goofy. They are serious. We will have some fun with it. But before I get to the rapid fire questions, my final question to you is, both Allison and I always talked about playing for Michigan State. It was kind of both of our dreams. I probably talked about it 24 hours, 7 days a week. I'm sure it probably drove you and Mom nuts a couple of times. But to see both her and I, to see us both wearing that green and white, running out on our respective courts, if you will, volleyball and basketball, to that fight song, the fight song that you went to college, cheering and clapping for, the fight song that you were working under as an administrator, for you to see that, was that kind of like the cherry on top, like, was that like the cherry on top when it came to being a parent? Those moments right there.
I don't know about cherry on top being a parent, but it was the cherry on top of being an administrator at Michigan State. Nothing topped it. I mean, nothing. Yeah, I mean, I can still remember both your senior days. I can remember you playing, and you didn't play a lot, but you were right in the middle of it. I had a lot of fun coming watching your practice.
Yeah.
But wearing that uniform, I tell you what, one thing I did want when I was in school here that I never got. All I wanted to do was earn a varsity letter. And I really wasn't good enough to do that. I played baseball for a couple of years. I just wasn't good enough. But both my children did. So to me, that's better than me winning a letter, because you guys got to wear that uniform. You got to compete at the highest level. Okay, the highest level. You played in a Big Ten basketball tournament in Indianapolis.
Yep.
You played. You played. So that's as high as it gets. Okay, I couldn't do that. Your mother would have if she'd have played in a different time, because she was an off-the-chain college athlete that played in a time when the women didn't have the opportunity that they do now. But both my kids did, and that is the joy I got from that is undescribable.
One of my favorite moments, other than seeing you at the media table watching our practices, that was always special to me because I knew the scout team was kind of my time to shine because it was my time to go out and kick everybody's butt, kick Day-Day's butt, kick AP's butt, kick Nix's butt, Alex Gana. I mean, those were the best times. It was just having you sitting there front row watching it. But my favorite one from my senior year, other than hugging you after we won the Big Ten tournament, because we had witnessed so many, witness guys like Mo Pete, Mateen win Big Ten tournament title together. I mean, that was an incredible moment. But my all-time favorite was, when you went to Minnesota with us, because you took me on my first ever road trip, and when I was in fourth grade to Minnesota, and you went on that road trip with us my senior year to Minnesota. And I thought that moment, it still gives me chills this day, Dad, because like you said, that right there, that was kind of our closing the circle moment. Like, this is where it kind of started for you and me, and this is where it kind of ended. And it's fun because we were losing in both those games too, and we ended up coming back and winning.
Yeah, right. Exactly right.
Oh man, just incredible moments and just times and moments that I'll never forget. And a lot of that is because of you and Mom. They really are.
It was the best. We enjoyed it. Still enjoy it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right, Dad, you ready for some rapid fire questions?
Rapid fire. Okay.
All right, so I ask different questions all the time to my guests, but question number one is the traditional, if you will, just like the Masters. It is the tradition that will start every rapid fire question. So question number one, strawberry or grape jelly?
Strawberry.
Question number two, your favorite hangout place in Dexter?
Favorite hangout place in Dexter? The high school gym.
I like that. Question number three, who is your favorite superhero and why?
Superhero?
Yep.
Always like Superman.
Yeah. Superman's always original. Any reason why?
He's just a badass.
I'll take that. All right. Your favorite Michigan State moment that wasn't the Final Four or the Rose Bowl?
Favorite Michigan State moment. The game, the football game in Ann Arbor when they bungled the punt.
Oh yeah, that was
Yeah.
And to be there live for that's one of those
Yeah.
bucket list moments that will never happen again in your entire lifetime.
No. That's a once in a generation moment. Maybe once in 100 years moment. Yeah.
Yeah, no question. Question number five, best motivational speaker not named Anthony Ianni.
Oh, best motivational speaker. I would say Dr. Charles Ping, who was the president at Ohio University when I was down there. He was an Episcopal minister and a PhD. He could say more in 2 minutes than other people could say in 20. And he could motivate you. Yeah.
I love that. Dr. Charles Ping. Question number six, if you could teach a class, what subject would it be?
Would be on leadership.
I like that. Question number seven, your favorite, I should probably know this one, but I may be caught off guard by it. Question number seven, your favorite all-time movie?
Favorite all-time movie?
Yep.
It's either Caddyshack or The Natural.
Okay. I knew Caddyshack was on there. It's
1A and 1B.
I like that. All right. Question number 8. Shout out to Sparty's Coney Island. Question number 8. Sparty's Coney Island pancakes or Sparty's Coney Island chili cheese omelet?
Chili cheese omelet.
Yeah. You can't go wrong with that one. Cannot go wrong with it. Question number 9. Actually, you probably already answered this one, but we'll go ahead and do it again. Your favorite, actually, no, I'm sorry, I messed up. Question number 9, your favorite college facility you've been to outside of Michigan State and why?
Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
Because of the tradition.
I like that. And last but not least, question number 10. Who do you admire the most?
Who do I admire the most?
Yep.
Your mother,
And why?
because she has a good heart and she's one of the wisest people I've ever met in my life.
I love that, Dad. I love that. All right, Dad. Now for the last part of the show, I give all my guests their time to shine, if you will. So you get the microphone for however long you want it. I want you to give my listeners your positive message of the week for them, especially for the fathers, considering this is a Father's Day episode.
Okay. Well, I would say that take the time. I would advise people to take the time to listen to other people, to listen to other people's thoughts, even though they may be very different than ours, and weigh those thoughts and see if there's anything there that might be able to guide you or help you. But we talked earlier, Anthony, about listening. And I feel very strongly that we need to listen to each other more. We need to treat each other better. We don't treat each other very well in this country right now. And we just need to be nicer to each other. It sounds simple and trite, but it's so true. And the last thing is to be respectful. Be respectful of ourselves. Be respectful of others. Be respectful of others' rights. We've got so many issues in this country right now, and so much of it is because we just don't respect each other. So I just respect each other. We're all different. None of us are. There's no two of us that are alike. Okay, we're all different, right? So let's be respectful of that, and let's listen. And the fathers out there, enjoy Father's Day and embrace the beauty that is being a father, because there's nothing like it, and you make so much difference in your children's lives.
Folks, that is my father, the one, the only, Greg Ianni. Dad, I'm going to try my best not to get emotional right now, because I know both you and Mom are listening. You guys are the reason why. You guys are the reasons why I am who I am today. And without your support, without your guidance, without your guys' wisdom, without your patience. I mean, you talk about patience. I mean, you guys were so damn patient with me. And, I know there were probably times I pushed you guys to the edge. There probably were. But it didn't stop you guys from keeping those expectations for me high. And that's the one thing I always tell parents, is that you guys kept those expectations high for me. And because of that, not only did you push me into the man and the person I am today, but you guys were the reasons why I was able to achieve what I wanted to achieve in life, which was to graduate from Oakland High School, which was to graduate from Michigan State, which was to play for Coach Izzo at Michigan State. You guys are a big reason why all that happened. And I can't thank you enough. I love you both so much, Dad, and thank you for being the greatest father in the world.
Well, appreciate it, Anthony, but don't ever forget that we provided the support, but it wouldn't have got done if you weren't the person you are. So don't ever forget that. And it's been fun. It's a lot of fun.
It will. We'll do it again. Thanks.
All right.
Dad.
Take care.
Thanks, Dad. Again, I cannot thank my father, Greg Ianni, enough for coming on today. That will probably be the last time in a while that you'll see me get emotional, because of everything that my parents have done for me, the support they've given me. And again, I'm so grateful and thankful to have incredible parents like them. And, I've learned so much from my dad. This was a guy who taught me to block out all the noise when people told me I couldn't do something. This was the guy who taught me the harder you work, the more you earn. And those are philosophies or mottos, I should say, that I live by and I will always live by for the rest of my life. But for my positive message of the week, I want to piggyback off what my dad told me and what he said in this interview. And that is to communicate more with each other. And how do we communicate more? Well, first and foremost, these little devices, if you're listening on iTunes, Spotify, Odyssey, you can't see it, but I'm holding my phone. Now I'm going to toss it off to the side because, my dad's right. We need to start listening more to each other. We need to start having better conversations and starting to communicate more and more. But the other thing we need to do, especially today's younger generation, is step up to the plate. What I mean by step up to the plate, simple. Step up to the plate and be a leader. Because I think we're at a point now where we're all so afraid to step up to the plate and be leaders at something because we're all afraid of what people are going to say about us. We're all afraid of what people are going to say if we step up to the plate and try to defend somebody, or if we try to be a leader in some place. And I think that's what we're missing the most, is we're missing those leaders. Somebody who could step up to the plate and say to somebody, hey, that's not how we do things. That's not how we roll with things. Step up and be a leader. And don't be afraid. Forget about what anybody says or thinks about you. Forget about it. You want to be a leader, be a leader. It's going to come with consequences. But guess what? As long as you know you're being a great leader and you're doing the right things, stepping up to the plate, being good and respectful to others, that's all that matters. If somebody doesn't like you being a leader, then guess what? It means they can't step in your shoes. It's just reality. So be a leader and don't worry about what the world says or thinks about you. Don't worry about what your friends say or think about you. Don't worry about what friends, family, teachers, media, social media, doesn't matter. As long as you know you're being a leader at what you do, you're being great at what you do, and you are being a leader in the process, that's all that matters. Don't worry block out the noise, like my father always taught me. Block out the noise and work hard every day at what you do, because the harder you work, the more you earn. Again, thank you guys so much for joining us. Have an incredible week. And once again, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Peace and love, everybody. Thank you.
Anytime you're shortcutting it, you're probably cheating some people. Players play. Tough players win.